Welcome back. My next guest is Nestor J. Aparicio. Nestor, welcome in.
How are you? I've for all the viewers who watch us at Baltimore Positive in our YouTube channel, and they are numerous. I have put the Oriole Park at Camden Yards and the sun shining behind because the sun is out now. Adley Rutschman is here, Dennis. It's fixed.
Does this signal a change, changing of the guard, or perhaps a change from the Orioles being an also-ran franchise to a competitive one, perhaps, as they still have some young talent to bring up from the minors?
Well, they've been much more competitive this year, right?
They really have. I'm
think
watching them.
Yeah, you could say that, and the fact that they're taking baby steps. The issue of the last 5 years, they didn't have Major League Baseball players. The more Adley Rutschmans and the more Mountcastles and the more Grayson Rodriguez, the more major league players they get. Representatives one thing, relevant is another, and it's not even Memorial Day and the season's over, right? We sort of, you have to temper the spirit of all that, know that the Ravens are around the corner, and if that's your thing around here, that they are the great purple hope here at this point. And the Lamar thing's bizarre. I mean,
yeah, and it's
not a good look. I just saw that look on your face, and that's the Dennis Koulatsos. I've known you a long time. That's not a good look.
We want volunteers, not hostages. That's the kind of look that I gave you just now, Nestor. It's just not a good look for him. You've got two new tight ends in camp. You've got Rashad Bateman trying to be wide receiver one. You don't have Hollywood Brown. You've got Duvernay Prochet, all these guys that you need to develop chemistry with. And I know it's not mandatory, as it will be June 14th and 16th, but I'd like to see the player there, even if he's not working out to protect himself from injury, perhaps. But I'd like to see him in camp. And I don't think that's asking too much of a guy that you're potentially going to ink to a $300 million contract in the near future.
Dennis, I've been up and down this river a long time, and I remember I really got on the wrong side of Ray Lewis early on. I mean, I had no problem with Ray came out to the show, the bar, and all that, but Ray held out of one of these sessions early on, and I thought, and I went on the radio and I said, look, you want to be a Hall of Famer, you want to be a leader, you want to be the highest paid guy on the team, we're all for that. Art Modell's for that. Steve Bisciotti's for that. We have no problem paying you fair market rate. We have no problem paying you tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. All we're asking for is your best effort at all times. At all times, to be looking through the windshield, ahead at the road, and being in the car with us. We're doing this together, because that's what we're all going to talk about. John Harbaugh's going to, we're going to do this together. And this is a bad look. And it's indefensible for me, for the kid, and somebody out there's, well, the agent, this, and he doesn't even have an agent. So who the hell knows who's even giving him advice at this point? The more I go around and talk to people, because I've been cocktailing and I've been networking in a way that I haven't the last 2 years, right? I was out at the new opening at the Marriott out in Owings Mills the other night, just talking to people who are fans. Lamar's at a pretty critical point here in a lot of ways. What highway you want to go down? Is this the NBA? Do you want to be Deshaun Watson and go off to the next team? Do you want to be on your third team or your fourth team? Or is this really a thing that you want? And they don't put Lamar in front of me. I've never sat and talked to Lamar. They don't want that. They don't want Lamar having questions from a guy from Dundalk who's done this for 30 years about himself, his life, the things that I talk about on my show. They don't want to put him on here. But the first thing I would ask him is, what do you like about ball? And I would press him on that. Why do you want to be here? Do you want to be here? Because that's the next round of questioning.
Absolutely.
Whenever Chad Steele opens the gold doors out in Owings Mills, and I get to come in and act like I'm Jerry Coleman and do that thing, the first question that when they throw a mic in his face is going to be, do you want to be here or do you not want to be here? Because that really should be the question. Because if you don't want to be here on a nice spring day in May, tossing a football around, and you haven't been around in 100 days, then you get the controversy that follows you. You earn your reputation. You've made yourself known this week in a way that guys we give $300 million to around here have not behaved in the past. And I would say that for Ray Lewis. I would say that for Cal Ripken. I would say that for Joe Flacco. I would say that for anyone, Haloti Ngata, Ed Reed, anyone who's a leader, John Ogden, anyone who's a leader. You want to be the highest paid. You want to sit in, you want to have the best seat in class. You want to have the parking spot. You want to have the retirement. You want all of that. You want that Sam Cooke retirement ceremony. I mean, this goes back to Messina this week, right?
Yep.
Buster Olney's been going crazy on Messina about 35 and Adley Rutschman and whatever. And it's not about Messina leaving. I mean, that was his, that was a good decision on his part. I don't know that Lamar, having the head coach of the Ravens, say, we'll let Lamar speak for Lamar, and Lamar's not here. And last I checked, everybody else is here,
I flashed back to Brian Billick, and I believe it was Mike McCrary who was in the camp early on in Billick's tenure, and he said, I'm only going to talk about players that are here. I'm not going to address players who aren't here. It was reminiscent of that statement from Coach Billick.
I heard Coach Billick say a lot this week. I went to the reunion on Monday night.
You got to tell me about that.
Did you get any fallout on the reunion Monday night? Did you hear about it or anything?
I haven't heard anything about it. You got to tell me, how was it?
Right. First things first. Bought a ticket, showed up, sat in row Y. Lots and lots and lots of old faces, old friends, people that mean a lot to me, people that made me choke up and said nice things and whatnot. So it was a wonderful night in that way, right? So it was an ESPN production. So the first thing you notice when they come out, so I'm going to read the roll call for you, okay? Marvin Lewis, Jack Del Rio, Rod Woodson,
wow,
Tony Siragusa, and Ray Lewis. That's the left side of the stage, okay?
Man.
The right side of the stage is Brian Billick. I want to get the order right because it was off. It was Brian Billick, Shannon Sharp sat next to Brian, Trent Dilfer, and Jamal.
Wow.
Jamal sat on the outside. So you look at it and you're like, where's Ogden? You're like, that's the first thing I thought. Where's Ogden? And somebody said, where's Reed? I'm like, he wasn't on the team. But John wasn't there. And as it turned out, when I got out of there, John was in Las Vegas. And you may have had some business compatriots, because I did, in Las Vegas for the big Maryland We Want Your Business convention that they have in Las Vegas every year. And Ogden every year does that with 500 really wealthy Baltimore and Maryland business owners trying to bring business to Maryland, right? So John was there and had a long-standing thing. ESPN paid these guys to come in. It was a made-for-television thing to spark conversation. It was very well done because NFL Films was involved in it, okay? So first things first, the audio was awful. For a spoken word thing, they didn't have enough speakers. It's a place made for music. It's acoustically meant for music, so it's very, very echoey as a hall. It is not a soft hall. It is, and if you're a low talker and you can talk like this, or if you get off the mic. So there were times where some of the quips and stuff were a little inaudible.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Siragusa would mumble something and everybody on stage laughed, but you couldn't hear it past the 10th row. So there was that. Okay. So I'm going to have to watch the television version at some point to sort of catch,
piece it together.
The 15% that I missed, right? The little lines and whatnot. What did he say? You know, that kind of thing. Sage Steele was going to make her triumphant return to Baltimore, and she was going to be the MC. She had an unfortunate tragedy. I
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. She got hit with a golf ball. I didn't know she was the MC or the host or any of that stuff. I mean, I didn't realize that until Kevin Byrne walked out. Right. Kevin Byrne was Sage Steele. Kevin Byrne did the thing where he sat there and moderated storytelling. It was completely scripted in a Grammys kind of way. I mean, Kevin came out, he was reading off of a teleprompter.
How long was the program, Nestor?
It went about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
lots of conversation then.
This was not stingy in any way.
Understood.
But it was orchestrated in a way that they began with, let's screw with Brian. They played the match game. Everybody laughed at Brian. Brian laughed at Brian. They played a match game around Brian, trying to get his players to call him a name. 3 of them called him a son of a bitch. So that was part of, you're laughing, and it was all part of like the fun. Then they got into, they didn't cover Ray or Ray's drama. They didn't go into any of that, right? But they talked about football. They talked about the season. They talked about offense. I'm surprised Dilfer showed up, right? It was an ESPN thing.
Good thing they sat Shannon between Brian and him, I would think.
They shook hands, and it was relatively, there was nothing combustible other than Kevin Byrne probably ragging on Goose. But you know what the weird part was at the end of the night? And I don't mean this to be, I didn't feel like anybody talked enough. For 2.5 hours. For 2.5 hours. The weirdest part is it felt like Jamal didn't say anything. It felt like Dilfer spoke once and very little and said his thing, and he was interruptive at one point, added something that was kind of funny, because he got blamed for the beginning of the season. He's like, I didn't play in October, He's like, so it was one of those things. Rod Woodson's one of my favorite 3 of my favorite people on earth were on that stage, right? Maybe 4 if you add Jack, and I don't want to be disrespectful to Jack because I like Jack a lot, right? But impactful people in my life: Brian Billick, Marvin Lewis, and Rod Woodson, and I like Goose. Goose comes on the show, and Goose and I cut up, and if I called Goose, told him it was on fire, he'd bring a hose right now, right? Ray, I see Ray. I don't like the way Ray treats me. So I don't, so I say hi to Ray, and that's that. And it's not bad with Ray. It's just not, Ray hasn't been on my radio show this century. All I do is talk to people for a living. If he wants to talk, he opened a restaurant, he could come on. Dilfer has sat with me. The interesting part, Dan, and to be really frank, I have all of these conversations in long form that I could give to ESPN and say, you want something from Trent Dilfer? How about the night he was at the barn sobbing about how bad he wanted to win a championship and wanted to deliver it for Baltimore? Like, I have all that kind of stuff on tape, right? And the week before the Denver game, it was literally the week of the Denver game. We were playing Denver, the biggest week in Baltimore, like ever. Like, we had a playoff game in Baltimore, right? The Ravens, 2001. So that era of time and the storytelling, I thought Shannon was fantastic. I didn't always understand him, right? Because I couldn't hear every word. Shannon held court and was good. Brian was Brian. Brian was great. Marvin and Jack added their thing. Goose was the comedian. I thought Ray was great. Ray was great. Yeah, Ray spoke like an adult. Ray didn't talk a lot early on. It didn't come to Ray for a while. I thought Kevin did a nice job. Kevin's forgotten more about this than anybody. But the video screens and so they took you through the season. Have you ever seen the unedited Billick Titans?
I saw it, and it was I saw the clip where he said "blank the Titans," and it was pretty epic. I've seen it.
It's in there, right?
Oh,
so
it's in there.
Cameras off. Cameras off.
Turn the cameras off.
Were not off.
Yeah,
the cameras were
not
off.
There was at least one camera that was on, and I'm glad I captured it because I didn't see that clip for a long, long time.
Well, we're in a theater with 1,500 people. The place went crazy, So it was like a movie. They stopped and started with film clips, and then they came back and talked. And they stopped and they started. And then at the end, they did the Super Bowl, right, in the week. And, Brian, the day that he did the "you're not qualified" when he drank the water, the crowd went crazy for that too. I was with him that night. He left that press conference, and I was with him. Bob Haney was with me at his hotel suite at the Hyatt West Shore. I went up to his suite. We sat in his suite with the balcony open, and I did an hour conversation with him for One-on-One Sports. I was syndicated. So I have that conversation. So I have him very, very fresh and raw from 3 hours removed from that press conference. And so I have all of this on tape. I put it all in a book. So a lot of it for me was passive. The one thing that Dilfer told as a real story that's a news piece that would be interesting is that his playbook was stolen in Tennessee. Did you know that?
Yes.
For years, it was a mystery. The guy who stole it told him 5 years ago, I stole it.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, that they have come clean.
Okay.
That they did steal it. Dilfer said when they came out to play, they were calling his plays. He knew they had stolen the book.
Because he didn't have the book, so he knew they had possession of it. So
when they were calling the plays ahead of time, he knew that they had stolen it. Right. That it wasn't just lost; it was nefarious, right? So all these years later, Dilfer came clean on that. I don't know that there was any news. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that you don't already know, that wasn't in Purple Rain or wasn't in one of the videos or isn't a part of the lore of all of it. But Dennis, it is magic. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's magic. It's at the end on the screen, the 10 gentlemen came to the front, right? And they looked on and the confetti flew one more time. And it was pretty cool. Like if you saw any of the video clips of that, it was worth $35, if that matters. It was better than going to a lot of games.
Well, and ESPN always does a great job on those 30 for 30 shows.
Well, and the other part of it was Kevin Byrne pinch hitting. I mean, I could have sat in that chair and done a good job. Scott Garceau could have sat in that chair and done a good job. There are people who were around the team. Brian could have sat in that chair and just done it, right? I mean, like literally, right? And it would have been good. But Kevin flew in and clearly spent the weekend becoming an MC for this event and was sort of a Grammy host fill-in, like kind of sort of, and it was incredibly appropriate. It was great, And
I like Kevin. Kevin was always very, very passionate about the Baltimore Ravens. Just loved the team, and I'm sure he still loves the team.
Well, and that was a massive part of his life too. I mean, it was very, very appropriate that he sat in that seat. It's kind of a shame Ozzie didn't want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like in that way. And John Ogden not being there. I mean, there was nothing missing from a player standpoint other than everybody being there. And at the end, when the confetti flew, Matt Simon, Femi Ayabandejo, Kyle Richardson wasn't there. Matt Stover wasn't there. There was just some missing ingredients. But, they brought Saragoose in as the class clown. It was a very worthwhile night, and I can't wait for the 30 for 30. And as an aside, Dennis, I'm going to release Purple Rain 1. I don't know if you ever read Purple Rain 1 or not. I'm going to re-release it online in the coming weeks. And I'm going to do 2 as well. I mean, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff content-wise this summer to gear up for football season and to get ready for the 31 Crab Cake 31 Brewery Tour.
Well, Nestor, as always, I appreciate your time and your insight and sharing these stories with us.
Well, yeah, I hate to let it go, right? I mean, it's been 20 years because it is gone, right? I don't sell books for Purple Rain. Nobody comes up to me and says, hey, can I see the ring or any of that stuff? So to actually pull it out all these years later, it's still the value I guess it has for me are the people, seeing Marvin and seeing Brian. I saw Jack. Jack and I are making a dinner date down at Dulles in a couple of weeks. So, I mean, it's just it's one of the great stories of my life. So to go see it for a couple hours and now they're going to make a movie. Of course, I'm going to watch it.
Life is good. Keep doing great things, Nestor. We'll catch you. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you again next week.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Get something on the grill.
You got it. There he goes, Nestor J. Aparicio here in 1570 AM, Baltimore Positive WNST. We'll take a quick break and come back right after this.